welcome to today's Studio Shop Gallery Art Talk. Our guest today is artist Leslie Rowland, who is exhibiting at the Studio Shop Gallery with the show Interconnected: Art, Nature, and Science. Her art expresses the interconnectedness in nature, and she also interconnects her artistic practice with some science and technology. I have Leslie on the other end here, and she has a background in science with a graduate degree in environmental science. And so I wondered, Leslie, if you'd like to talk to us about how you became an artist and how does relate your science background and your artist background.
Sure. Well, I've been painting I've been a professional artist for 30 years. And I studied during that time. So I maintained my my art career. And then I just kept studying what interested me, which is science. I just happened to communicate science through art, which is a kind of a juxtaposition that you don't always see. But I always thought that eventually I would grow up and be a scientist. So I got my undergraduate degree and decided to keep painting and exploring. And my art career kept growing. And then I got my master's degree and started to look for a job. I felt really compelled to do this, but I had an art career that I loved, and it just pours out of me. I can't even keep up with the ideas and with the inspiration. And then it occurred to me that there is no better way to communicate science than through art.
You're expressing really well that interconnectedness of your science background and artistic expression. I think I'm getting that right, that it comes out in both parts of your brain are acting together on this.
Absolutely.
So like the meaning of interconnectedness, do you have like other thoughts on the meaning and inspiration of interconnectedness for you?
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Interconnectedness is the driving message behind virtually every piece that I do. We tend to go through life sometimes thinking that we are living in a bubble, that what we do is in isolation. And that's just not true. Everything we do has an impact, a ripple effect. That's something that I think is really important to communicate, because we realize that we need to preserve all of nature, rather than just little bits and pieces. And then we realize too that everything that we do impacts that. Where it comes into the binary code is that binary code too is used in a network communication. So it's the planet is buzzing with messages going back and forth in binary code, be it a grocery list, a love letter, or the news. That's how we now pass information.
So how about we take a look at some of your pieces of art, and you want to talk about some specific pieces?
Sure, absolutely.
Maybe you want to start with the Rising with the Sun is
Sure.
The image of the great egret.
Yeah, that's it. Well, my husband and I row, and we're frequently out on the water in the dark, and we see the sunrise, and we really get some beautiful, intimate encounters with water birds like great egrets and herons. And when the sun is rising and the heron rises up, or the egret rises up, it looks like their feathers are on fire. So that was something that I tried to capture in that piece, the dawn reflecting in those beautiful white feathers. What makes the egret such a great subject is that they were almost wiped out in the 19th century because their feathers were popular for ladies' hats. They were, I believe it was 1910, they were the subject of the first ever laws in the United States designed to protect a bird. And what's really great is the thing you don't get very often in these environmental stories is it was a success. They're generalists. They bounce back like crazy because they can live in so many places, and the legislation worked. So now they're the symbol of the Audubon Society.
So another of the these nature images is interlaced, a butterfly image right behind me.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, tell us something about the interconnectedness in interlaced.
Sure. So interlaced, of course, is a butterfly, and it's part of the pollinator series. The pollinator series shows the interconnectedness of nature by pointing out the relationships between pollinators and flowers. So if you look at interlaced, it's composed with images of the flowers that it pollinates. And in turn, those flowers provide it with nectar. Another piece, a partner piece, is suspended in bliss, and is a hummingbird, one of my favorite pollinators. And that one has a more natural bird with feathers, and it's surrounded by the flowers that it would pollinate.
Could we ask you about technique briefly here while we're looking
Sure.
at these images? Because what I really love about your work is the layering and texture that you get from, like, you're layering paint and then removing some, and without like going into too much detail, I'll let you talk about, like, how, is there a name for this technique, or what do you call it, something, or how does it feel to you, the layering and removal of stuff?
It's pretty much a 30-year rabbit hole. I haven't named it. It's my own. It's just something that's come about by trial and error. A lot of brave experimentation and a lot of like pretty grand failures have led to this technique. You can't be afraid to try new things and to really just go for it and make crazy mistakes. And then I start to carve into my paintings. I carve into the layers, I build up layers. So I'm sort of moving backwards and forwards into the piece to reveal the different layers of paint and the different textures that you find in a painting. I'm also doing polishing and compression to get acrylic paint to look this way. So a lot of the brush strokes are getting smoothed out and the paint is getting compressed. My goal is to make the painting look more like porcelain than acrylic.
It also reminds me, when I look at your like removal of layers, reminds me of like an archaeologist who's like cutting through layers of dirt to find what treasures are lying underneath.
Absolutely, and both are absolutely right. A lot of times when I'm doing the removal, I feel like an archaeologist trying to work carefully around a bone as I'm working around the imagery or a fossil. And I am trying to mimic the softness of natural weathering like you'd see in a canyon. The challenge for me lies in making it look fresh like nature did it.
Awesome. Great. Cool. So we've talked about the pollinator series and the birds and their flowers. Another more complex relationship is in the painting Hawks and Wildflowers. Do you want to tell us how that works?
Sure. So of course, with the pollinator series, you have a kind of a one-step relationship. I wanted to tell the story of the relationship between hawks and wildflowers because it's more than one level deep. Like so many relationships in nature, it's part of the web instead of just one step. So flowers create seeds, shelter, and of course, animals eat the actual blooms for small vertebrates, especially rodents, and even the small birds that the hawk will eat. So without the flowers, the hawk wouldn't have as much access to the animals that he eats. In turn, the hawk helps to keep those vertebrate populations in balance because even those little vertebrates like mice and rats and squirrels and chipmunks, they have their very important roles. So we don't want to wipe them out. We just want to keep them in balance. And so the hawk does that for the flowers. So they have a very important relationship that's not readily apparent at a glance and is definitely more than one layer deep.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't normally think that the hawk and the wildflower are kind of on the same team in a way.
Sure.
They're hawks protecting against those gophers and so on. Go ahead and tell us about A Place to Rest with the magnolia boughs.
Sure. Well, I think we all love trees. I really love to paint trees, but I'm also so interested in relationships. So I like to paint trees with the birds that they have a relationship with. Really fun research. And again, you end up with that whole web of connections. It's super interesting. But in these two paintings, there's one day and one night because I couldn't decide if I was going to do a day sky or a night sky. And so I did both. But in these pieces, it's a relationship between the goldfinch and the magnolia. So magnolias, many species of magnolias are evergreen. So they provide really important shelter for songbirds, including the goldfinch. The goldfinches also eat the magnolia seeds, and they prey on insects that are on the magnolia. What the magnolia gets out of the relationship is that the goldfinches help to keep those insect populations in balance, and this helps the tree to be more healthy. So they have a great little mutualistic relationship going.
Right. So an interesting thing about the magnolia is that it gets pollinated by beetles, not
Yes.
by bees and butterflies. That's kind of an evolutionary thing because magnolias are so old in an evolutionary time scale.
And it is really all about balance, because if you have too many beetles and they eat all of the pollen, then of course the tree can't be fertilized. So you even have to keep your pollinators in balance. So everything needs to be in balance. And that's, I think sometimes one of the things that we forget, we think of some species as pest species, and they have a role typically. Even squirrels have a role.
Do you want to talk some about the big one, you will do great things?
Sure. I think we just need to really just believe in ourselves and just strive to do great things. And that's what this piece is for. It's a mantra. So my binary code pieces are typically mantras, things that I think are really important for people to hear and to believe. And we all need to believe that we're going to do great things, and we all can do great things. Doesn't matter how old we are, how young we are, what we've done yet, where we've been. We can do amazing things if we just believe in ourselves and put our minds to it.
That's a very positive outlook. I like that. And I want to mention to everyone listening, at the gallery, we have some binary charts here. So people can hold the chart up next to a painting and pick out what the binary codes, what letters they represent, and see it's really true that Leslie has put in these pieces like the actual letters they spelled out, but it's so artistic and beautifully done until you start thinking about binary and looking at the zeros and ones. It just looks like a beautiful painting. And we have the other ones, other binary pieces like zeal and love and kind. What are you hoping your audience gets from looking at your work?
Well, I think I already alluded to it a little bit. It's kind of twofold. I want to be able to communicate science in a way that's approachable. And by doing so, I want to engender in people the desire to protect the natural world, because it's so important to me, and it's important to all of us. Without it, we really aren't separate from it, and it sustains us. And I just really am hoping that by creating some familiarity with these relationships in nature, people will then strive to protect them. The other part is where the binary code comes in, and I've also already kind of alluded to this, that I think we have to believe in ourselves and love ourselves, and just have really strong goals. And I think until we love ourselves, we aren't able to do good in the world. So I think those two go together. I don't think you can have one without the other.
Thank you, Leslie, for joining us today and sharing your artist insights into your beautiful artwork and the concept of interconnectedness. I invite our viewers to come into the Studio Shop Gallery and see Leslie Rowland's artwork in person and to experience the interconnectedness of art, nature, and science.